Hello, I'm Lelani Nicolaisen. I curate at the UP Museums. I'm curating the University of Pretoria Museum's exhibition here at the Javett-Art Centre. The title of the exhibition is Artology, Select Works from the University of Pretoria Museum's 1922 to 2022. And I'm here with Jan van der Merwe, an artist that we have here on exhibition, and you can please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and also to be part of this exhibition. It means a lot for me in the sense because if I look at the body of work and what's happening on the exhibition, to be part of it, it's a great honor to be part of this exhibition. And I'm Jan van der Merwe, a senior lecturer at Tshwane University of Technology. I'm on retirement at the moment, but I still got part-time students for master students, so I'm still a little bit busy in the academic world. And my dream was always to be a full-time artist, and I'm 65. Hopefully I could become a full-time artist now.
That's fantastic. I'm sure you are going to do great things now, as always.
Oh no, thank you for that. But I must just compliment you with this exhibition. And if you can just tell me more about the exhibition and the artists and how you selected the work. It's fascinating, and as I said, I'm very excited to see this exhibition. It's always good to see young people invest in art and take part in art, and then also take out the work out of a collection and give them a new dimension and value. But if you might just explain me a little bit more about how did you put the work together?
Thank you. So, as I said, the exhibition title is Artology. So Artology is a new word that we defined at the University of Pretoria Museum. So it's about how the different components between art collections, curatorship, conservation and archives come together, and how we take an object and from the inside look outward. So we want to really look at how objects are defined as well. So the exhibition is centered around that, but it's also about 100 years of collecting, because last year, 2022, was our centenary for collecting art at the university. And so my thoughts around the exhibition was, how do you create one exhibition of 100 years with so many works? So we had to go through about 700 works which we thought were worthy of being exhibited. Not that the other works were worthy, but which we thought needed to be on exhibition. And then we kind of narrowed it down to 100 works, or just little over or little less than 100. And so with a collection of this timeline, there's lots of problems if you look at where it started and where we are now. So I looked at works from the first work, which is a Pelkruger work that was donated by the artist Hendrik Pierneef to the university in 1922. And then our last work is an Art-More piece by what's his name now? Sorry, Javett and Lelani. So it's a fantastic work, pangolin and crocodiles. So that's also, we bought it for the centenary. And so with this exhibition, I started to look at the timeline and how works start to speak to one another, because from your work, which is The Traveller, to a work from, let's say, David Lelani, which is titled Made in South Africa, just in a very natural way that these works start to speak to each other, because we can't always curate narratives by artists. I think that it needs to speak for themselves. So I think that's it, Yeah,
well, I think it's as I said, I think it's, for me, because I'm in education also, I think it's a very important exhibition. And the one hand, is to do with different timelines and different stages of history in South Africa. But there's also another thing that's interesting for me, and I think for art students also, because it doesn't matter in which timeline you are, there's something in the art making, and I'm very interested in the art making process. So if I look at the wood carvings here, if I look at Michael Tefo's work, for example, and I look at drawings, looking at etching and paintings and ceramics and photography and printmaking, you know, that in itself's got its own history.
Yes.
The process of making art and also the technical abilities. So if you look at each work's concept, you look at the process that the artwork went through.
Yes.
If you look at the materials that was used, and then how the artists explore that materials and technical, explore it also to help the concept. And then also in some of the work, the presentations, like in my own work, like the installation, small installation. So I think out of that viewpoint, there's much more layers of archaeological layers in this exhibition. And I think also the dialogue that you try to create between the pieces are very interesting for me. So I think there could be lots of people writing maybe academic articles, and then also students that are really interested in the practical or the making of art, if they start analyzing the process. So I must congratulate you with this exhibition. For me personally, it's also interesting. I arrived here in Pretoria in 1977. I was working on the railway. I didn't have art on school, and I took my 1-year pension money. It was about 750 Rand. And I landed up here in Pretoria, and my lecturer, Gunther van Rys, is still alive. He's in his 90s. They took us to the Pretoria Art Museum, and it was the first time in my life that I actually saw an exhibition, you know. And I think there's maybe sometimes a child or somebody walking here with their parents and see this exhibition for the first time. And for me, I still remember I saw Christo Coetzee. I can see there's a Christo Coetzee drawing here, painting here. And I didn't know nothing about art, but it inspired me so. And there was also hanging a Gunther van Rys artwork. And just the materials and the ductility of the materials, working with materials and mixed media inspired me. And now I retired myself. And luckily my one lecturer, Gunther van Rys, is still alive. He's in his 90s. But to walk through this exhibition with you today, it reminds me of lots of little things in myself also, and to look at work. But interesting, each time when you take a work out of a storeroom or a place and you put it in a gallery space or exhibit it, it gets a new life. There's something that's starting to talk in this work. So if you maybe can just tell me, you know, the works you mentioned, I think it was the last album, well, the two paintings that you compared.
Yes.
If you can just tell me a little bit how you put the work together and to create a dialogue.
Okay, thank you. So I always thought that visually. I am also an artist. I studied art and have a master's in fine arts, and so I really look at it as creating an artwork. I think it has to be visually appealing. But then there's also narratives. I'm also looking at the narratives that the artworks do speak. For instance, putting the Last Supper from Avi Sifil next to a work by Stanley Pinker titled Kos op die Tafel. And both of them have very strong conceptual, strong concepts, and both have to do with the landscape, and a very problematic landscape. So I looked at that, and I also, for instance, we have these beautiful Judas Mashlangu works, which he did while he was at Hawks Drift at the Art Centre. And when he said earlier, he spoke about the works being in storage. So these works were recently donated, I think in 2019. And then they are colored etchings. So we also took them out and decided to frame them. And it's just, I just got new life, and it's amazing works, and it's very scarce work. They aren't so, we can't find them always. And it's such a privilege to have them. They were donated by Carla Wassertal to the University of Pretoria Museum, and it's just amazing works. And so or they're on permanent loan.
I'm just curious, because I'm one of the lucky people that you invited now to the exhibition, And I just want to ask, is there also some of the artists going to be present at the exhibition that's in the surrounding of Pretoria that you know that will be at the exhibition?
Yes, Avi Sufo will be here, and Gerard said Safisu Kamakame will be here. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
Yeah.
And we invited Michael Tefu.
Michael Tefu also, yeah.
We also invited Tommy Mutsoy, so we hope he will be coming. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's like a reunion. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
And so there are a few. Yeah. You can tell us a bit about your work and what you think of it in this space and how you think it connects to the work.
You know, if I can just speak from an artist, when somebody take a work into the collections, then you give this. It's like giving your child away for somebody to take care of it. And thank you for taking good care of my child, my artwork. But you know, it's interesting because when you take the work is going out of your studio and out of the exhibition space where it was visible for the public, and it go into a collection, and then you see it after a few years again. It's interesting, you know, to read that work because when you physical work on your work, your spirits go into the work, your everything. I can just explain a little bit of my materials. I'm working with rusted metal. Usually it's tins that you pick up in the street. So if you pick up a tin in the street, or you know where it was used for food or whatever, original function of the tin was to preserve food. I try to preserve something that's fragile. Life is fragile. And then also the rust allow me to put our own time into archaeological time. I can shift time. So it looks as if it's very old. And I'm trying to say that we have to deal with things happening now, like the war in Ukraine, or things going in the world where people suffer and things going bad. So in my own art making, it's like little monuments for the unknowns. Rust is a fight against time. And the whole thing is that to go back to your, they say rust is actually meaning to go back to your original dust. But it's interesting, when the earth started also, the oxidized process, the rust process is also giving oxidants, so it's not a negative always. But I like that thing that rust never dies, you know, because it changes. There's always a little bit rust. If you put the work maybe in a more, to the coast or to Durban or Cape Town, it will immediately, with the salt and everything, it activate in the air. So it's always in a subtle change. And, but as I said, I try to preserve something that's fragile. Life is fragile. In the process, I also use bitumen to just put everything together. You know, when I do the work on the rust, like the goat, or working on clothes or on the suitcase, and then I put it together with wire, and it's actually like my grandmother's needlework. I patch it, and it's like little pieces of puzzle putting together and try to understand what's going on in life. And then I'm using bitumen, and then I've got this red ground in my yard, and then I throw it over my artwork and take a brush like an archaeological and try to clean it, and then rediscover my work, you know. So I try to create a poetic moment, a moment where people can think or rethink about life. It's monuments for the unknown, and yeah, that's the daily things. I'm using mundane things as symbols in my artwork. But I think it connects also what you said about your exhibition, maybe explain, because I'm using cycles and the earth and rust, and you was talking about landscape. So, so it's for me an honor that I could be part of your exhibition and how you bring in the landscape. If you can maybe tell me a little bit more about your vision of the landscape.
So I think regarding the landscape is so prominent. It's everything is about the landscape. Wars are around land, and this Ukraine war, everything, the fight that South Africa's past is so much directed around land, and this all the problem starts is around land. But land is also precious. It's always ever changing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, when I started to put the works together, like that's what directed me, is this timeline of land. And though I won't always understand what the artist really always said, or if the artist sometimes just made a very visually aesthetic painting, or what he comments on, it's this land that's just bringing everything together. It's this land that directs us all, and it directs art, and it inspires art, and it inspires conversations, it inspires conflicts, and it's so interesting that something that's natural and so organic and that's just there and open for all is such a problem. And yeah, so that's what I always, the landscape, well, as an artist myself, it inspires my work. And I think with this, I see land everywhere, and I see just conversations artists are speaking about, and that's what directed me. When I look at, the works behind us is everything also about land.
Yeah.
And I just start to talk to each other. It's just, it's so natural how these works just come and just connect.
Yeah.
It's strange, but also fantastic. And
I think it's interesting you mentioned the land, because also if you look at the wood carvings, the excellent wood carvings here, Michael Teffelo and the other artists, that specific piece of wood was somewhere in the landscape, and to take that piece of wood and put a symbolic and carving in, it catches a certain spiritual thing. I also, when I walk through the exhibition that is still putting up, there's also something spiritual for me in the work. There's a spiritual connection in the work, in the sense, if you look at the work, and some of the work is done by earlier artists, and some of them already died, and then there's some new generation artists. So I like that dialogue, and also with this contemporary pieces of sculpture that you're going to exhibit, that you're busy exhibiting. So I think it's an interesting dialogue happening. We talked about the materials that was used also, and it's interesting because there's work that's done with cement, and there's bronze sculptures, and there's plaster of Paris, and then the wood sculptures. So it's very interesting, the combination of materials, but also I'm very also interested in the spirituality of material, and the meaning and that capture. And for me, some artworks, you can't get away. The artist is actually like a self-portrait that you capture. So, and to have that, to walk around this exhibition with nearly 100 works, I always tell my students, when you go to a library, you've got time and you take out a book, because there's lots of books, and you take the book back home and you can read the book at home, maybe with modern technology, you use a tab or something. But you select the thing that you want to read, and then, or a poem, and you read it a few times to understand it. And for me, if you walk through an art exhibition, it's actually each artwork is like a poem or like a book, and it needs more time to get that reference and the underneath thing. So that's why I feel sometimes people must visit the exhibition more than once time. The first time just to see what connect to you and the exhibition, but then there's some work that's starting to speak to you with lots of layers of work.
Yes, I'm also with some of the works, I start to pick up things that I never did before, and I'm like, but why didn't I see that? It's so interesting. Conversations. For instance, I was talking to somebody earlier about the Amita Mikan, which is self-portrait of the Merwe. And as we spoke, I realized, but it's actually strange, because this same painting, which she is referring to by Gustav Klimt, is actually also has this contested history that's happened around the work. That was actually, there was this court case about the work, there was a movie about the work, but how this actually also kind of influenced how art started to become repatriated back to their families, which is quite interesting, which I picked that up today when I spoke about that. It's fascinating. And so every time we start to pick up things, I mean, we have a Feliz Walila, it's a young artist. Her work is titled Simangele, which means surprised. And as I started to dig deeper in, I actually saw, but the work is actually a pregnancy test, which is fantastic and so fun. And so the works just keep on communicating. And well, I'm more of, I think, I know more about contemporary art, but now also with this exhibition and curating works from 100 years and so on, and how it starts to link with the contemporary art, which I am most familiar with, is actually also fantastic. And yeah, and how, for instance, your work now starts to fit in and talk in a different way. It's great. Yeah.
But also what was for me to just have a look at David Kulani's work again. I had the opportunities a few years ago on an exhibition, and I was talking to him, and he was so gentleman, and I was so proud to chat to him, and because I always like his work and how he capture atmospheres and the movement and the titilities in his work. And now for me to see his work again, you know, it's really beautiful. And then somebody like Maggie Loubser that, you know, everybody learns about her in history of art.
Yes, yeah.
And then to see a work here on this exhibition also, you know, and like you're talking about Pretoria and the history of Pretoria with Paul Kruger and Pierneef, you know, and the trees. And then also the contemporary artists now in the selection. So I think it's a nice way that the dialogue and the, as you mentioned, the line that you try to capture, we can't fill all the gaps. But I think if you look at each artwork and the meaning behind the artwork, there's more than just a timeline, there's layers of meaning behind each work. So it depends on the viewer, you know, and people that want to write articles or people that just want to use the artwork as a educational purpose, but then also to experience and to see this body of work together. It's a nice opportunity, and hopefully you can document the exhibition, because there's lots of people who won't see the exhibition, but and if the works go back to the original spaces on campus. But I think you're going to do it. But I always encourage people to document work, and I also want to say thank you for the crew that document this, because I think the important thing, our archive of artworks, it's in the younger generation's hands, you know, to archive, to take note and to take care of artworks, and that will actually encourage maybe somebody walking in a gallery and want to do art, but also encourage other people to maybe look different at the world, you know, or experience something. But I would like to say thank you for the opportunity. It's a really, I don't want to get into politics of art, but it's really nice to see that all the works is on a certain standard. It's good quality work. It's work that it's got meaning. It's nothing to do with at the moment of commercial work or selling work. I'm not against that, but in this case, it's work that's got meaning and it catches something. So I would like to congratulate you and also say thank you that I could be part of this exhibition. It also encouraged me to go back home and work, and hopefully it will encourage lots of younger students and people to go back and do the work. As I mentioned in the beginning, you know, if you look at the oil painting or you look at the print, you look at the sculpture, it depends what you as artists are going to use that materials and how you're going to use to say something contemporary of your society and what's happening now at the moment and what's the reflection it will give in the future. So I don't know if you want to talk more about the exhibition. I know you talked about the book launch, so maybe if you can just talk about the book, maybe it could be interesting.
Yes, so we are also launching a book, Artology, also on the opening evening. We're excited about that's also a very curated book where we not only showcase our art pieces, but all the works on exhibition will be in the book. And then we're also showing the Mapungubwe collection, and then we're showing all our curiosity pieces. For instance, we have one of the oldest chests in South Africa, a wooden chest, which is included in the book. We have a, what do we have in? We have maps in, we have like lots of strange things in the collection, which is quite exciting. Which we also, the same way this exhibition is curated, we kind of looked at how these objects and artworks speak to each other in the book. So that's also, it's very much lots of research that went into it, and also careful selection of how things also talk to each other in a way. And so
it's interesting that you mentioned, because the artworks are a section or a selection of work that's part of your collection, but that's not your only collection. So
No.
objects are a very important thing.
Yes.
I know you've got a Facebook page where you always put up a new,
Yes.
I think Gerrit is doing that.
Yes.
So it's exciting because I think then this could just be maybe make people curious about the rest of the work that's available. Is it
Yes.
available for people to, if they want to see some of these objects, and where can they see the objects?
Yes, anytime they can contact the University of Pretoria Museums anytime,
Yeah.
and then we can show them objects, or if there's specific items that interest them that they can think of and we might have.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of people maybe use it for research also,
Yes,
specific.
yeah, for research.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So that's, I
that's
think it's unique that you've got the collection of artworks, but also objects.
Yes.
So it makes it it's a very special collection that
Yes.
your museum is focusing on.
Yeah.
And you said it's 100 years already busy with this process.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so that is beautiful to have this exhibition after 100 years, and then also to celebrate your 100 years
Yes.
last year. And yeah, so I can just say thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you still want to say something about the exhibition and maybe the people that's involved and helping.
Oh, we are, I'll say, so all the works were conserved by our conservator Sandra Markgraf. She's done a fantastic job. It's been done, she's been conserving works here for a few years. And then Gerrit, the Kampa collections manager, he knows everything about everything. I think we have about 26,000 objects, 10,000 of which are about almost 10,000 artworks. So it's quite an extensive amount of research that goes through that, which is a walking encyclopedia. And our team, so Anthony now, the head of the department, our archivist, Halma and Michelle, everybody contributed to this exhibition and the books. And then another thing I wanted to say, in the exhibition, I also am including a frame, an empty frame, which it's a holding space, which I kind of contribute to artists who isn't in this collection, or artists who haven't been collected, artists who have never had the privilege to tell their stories or to be showcased. So I wanted to, with this timeline of 100 years, I wanted to just dedicate a space for the unknown, the unheard, and the special artists with so much talent that couldn't be here.
Yeah, and
today.
I agree with you, because there's lots of great talent in South Africa and unknown artists. So I agree with you that.
Unfortunately, everybody haven't been collected, and didn't have the privilege to just to speak up and say because of this timeline.
I just want to ask you also if you can just maybe explain the connection between the Javett and the museum, and you're exhibiting in this space. If you maybe, I don't know if you can explain about how does it work.
Okay, so the Javett-Art Centre and the UP Museums are both situated at the University of Pretoria. However, we are separate entities, but Javett-UP has been so kind for us to exhibit our collection here. So we are happy to be working with them. They are very much contemporary, where we are very much permanent gallery spaces. And we are finally...
because I think the Javett is, the whole South Africa knows about the Javett, and I think it's a major space for people to visit, international and national, and then also for the local and the people here with education. It's a stunning place to visit. I know we've got UNISA, we've got the Pretoria Art Museum, so there's lots of people doing their work, but I think this becomes a major contemporary space for discussions and things.
Javett is bringing lots of conversations in, and new artists.
And book launches that it's fantastic.
Bongi Glow was
the book that Dr. Fuchs supported was.
It's amazing. So
that's
doing
that's
great
beautiful.
work. It's a privilege to work with them too.